Hello, it's a great pleasure to host you all here. I really apologize for these technical difficulties. Unfortunately, we meet them as we are using all Zoom, BlueJeans, and all the other tools. It's a great pleasure to see that there is quite an interest and lots of people are now listening to us. Today, we are hosting a virtual launch of the Georgia's Fair Labor Platform. And we would also like to present two innovative online tools which are related to labor rights. This is a wage theft calculator and workplace safety monitor. Um, at the end of the meeting, as you will see, it's pretty much packed. We would also like to present a special report on the workers' rights in the pandemic and potentially in post-pandemic situation. So we will try to pack this all in 1 hour, and I hope the technical issues will be also very soon resolved. Um, just to say in general about labor rights in Georgia, actually this has been the field that has been the most neglected in the past 20 years. According to UN survey, for example, the workers' rights are the major concern of the Georgian society right now. According to the Global Labor Rights Index, the workers' rights are under repeated attacks by the private corporations, but are not adequately protected by the state. As tomorrow we are all celebrating the Human Rights Day, which marks, as we know, the adoption of the Human Rights Declaration. It's very important, I think, once again for us all to reconfirm that labor rights are human rights. And this is a very important part of our life in general. So what I can say, I mean, the platform that we are presenting today has been formed very recently, but its members, and I'll be talking more about them, have been involved, especially in the past 2 years, in a very important fight for workers' rights and for improving the general labor situation in Georgia. After quite a long advocacy and strikes, I would say, of a number of these organizations, finally, the Georgian parliament at the end of September this year adopted a new law on labor inspection and also the significant amendments to the labor code. This was, as I said, a result of a multi-year fight. And though we are not completely happy with the amendments are a significant step ahead. And they really put the basis for improvement of labor rights and safety of workers in their workspace. The labor platform now actually is an informal alliance, but it brings together, on the one hand, very experienced and well-known, at least in Georgia, organizations like Georgian Young Lawyers Association and EMC, Human Rights Education and Monitoring Center. On the other hand, the independent trade unions. Some of them have been formed recently, some of the others have been existing for quite a while. These are unions that to bring together the service sector workers, the medical workers, the journalists, social workers who have been also big fighters in the past years, and so on. So we as an organization, Open Society Georgia Foundation, are also the member and I would say a facilitator of this platform. And last but not the least, Human Rights Watch. This has been a very important member of this platform and has been giving us an incredible insight on how to improve things and how to organize together. We would expect that in the years to come, fair labor platform will be involved in lots of issues. One of them, of course, will be working on the with the labor inspectorate, increasing their mandate and strengthening their role. The second, I'm sure, will be finally increasing the minimum wage, which we did not achieve with this parliament to be included into the labor code, but we still have time to fight for the future. And of course, there will be lots of other issues which the platform will be involved in. As for these two tools that we will be proposing to you today, I think both of them are really innovative and really interesting. One is, as I mentioned, the wage theft calculator, which actually gives the employers the opportunity to kind of calculate what the employers owe them and are not paying them. And this is quite a drastic situation in these terms in Georgia. Is for the workplace safety monitor. There, it will be online platform where all the inspections will be uploaded and every worker will have an opportunity to see the place where they work. I mean, what has been done there, what has been found as violations, what has been improved and has not been improved. We believe that both will be significant tools for us, and maybe they can be also used in other countries. So I don't want to speak for too long, especially that we've lost some time in the beginning. Once again, thank you all for participating. I hope all this discussion will be, on the one hand, like really full of information. At the same time, I really hope it will be interesting. Now it's a great honor for me to give the floor to Mr. Maina Kiai, whom Georgia actually knows very well. He has been the first UN rapporteur on, on freedom of assembly and associations, and now he's heading the Human Rights Watch New Alliances and Partnerships Initiative. So I would really ask him to talk and give us his opinions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ketty, and thank you all for coming for this virtual launch, as we are learning to work in different ways. We are doing a lot of these things virtually now. It's clearly better than not doing it, but still doesn't touch us as much as in-person gatherings and meetings, which hopefully we'll be doing in the next few months once the vaccine is circulated across the world, when that happens. But I'm very pleased to be here, and I'm very pleased we've come to this stage. Human Rights Watch has been trying out a different strategy, an addition to our toolkit in terms of the way we work. And this is trying to work from the bottom up, building coalitions, building partnerships to work with people so that they then raise their own issues themselves. So it's a bit different from the traditional name and shame approach that many international organizations have adopted, but it's another toolkit. It's not the only one, it's just one of them that's coming in. So alliance building is also comes from the experience, I think, that we had when we were special rapporteur, in terms of the silos that have created around associations, and different organizations are in their own silos, working differently, working towards their own causes, without much linkage and much coordination and much collaboration. So this is an idea to say, look, no matter what work we're doing, if it's all in the cause for social justice, it's moving people forward, then maybe we should collaborate better. So this is where we are trying to use freedom of association and assembly rights to begin to move people together to work better, because we are always stronger together than when we're on our own. And it's also part of breaking down the silos and understanding that our work together is much more efficient and much more effective and much more powerful, really, if we do it right to get there. Now, of course, it's one thing to talk about, another thing to actually do it. And as you all know, in Georgia, building a coalition like on any issue It's very hard work. It's tough. We have to balance quite a lot of interests, quite a lot of personalities, quite a lot of egos, quite a lot of issues that are there. And it's a balancing act we have to do. And that's just everywhere in the world that you work on this. So it's a hard process. It's a slow process. But when it works really well. And so I'm really pleased to see that Georgia has come this far and is building that coalition, which probably will be expanding as we go along with this new launch of the fair labor platforms. So just to say as well, this is part of one of the projects we are doing at Human Rights Watch is Georgia. We have another one going on in Kenya, which is working around the port of Mombasa, that is trying to build again a coalition of people and trying to work on the Chinese-built, Chinese-funded and loaned railway that has been messing up the whole city. The port city has basically gone broke because of a railway and Chinese investment. So that's work that's going on now, and it's also quite interesting to see. And the third part of it is within the US, trying to work in the American South to work with Black workers to see how we can work with now German labor unions and German human rights organizations to see how we can influence unionization or laborization, if you wish, or collaborative work by workers within companies that are European owned, because these European companies have unions in their countries, but they don't have unions in the American South. So the question is, why should they have a different standard? How can we work that better? Now, there's no doubt in our minds that this work that we're doing is first of all very good, because it tries to bridge the gap that was being created over time between what is known as political and civil rights on one hand and economic and social rights, and say, look, these rights are all actually quite, as they say in the 1993 declaration, the Vienna Declaration, they're indivisible, they are inalienable, and they work together. So they're collaborative. So how do we work with those three together? So this is part of that part. And it's clear as well that sometimes these things they touch along some political issues, which is just fine because it's political and civil rights. And combining those political rights with economic rights and association for us is quite important. So ultimately, the objective for us in this coalition and in the other coalitions is to see how these coalitions can grow, can be independent, can be strong, and actually be political players within their own countries, so that so that when politicians and decision makers are thinking about making policies and decisions, they are considering the views and the approaches that go. So that come from these coalitions. So it's important for us that these coalitions are big and they can mobilize people, and so that their freedom of assembly is as important as freedom of association. So that's where the goals are. That's where the objectives are over the long term. But we are taking baby steps, because it's again, I think that the coronavirus has affected the pace of our work in so many ways. But I'd like to also thank Jeff and Georgie in Georgia and Georgie from Georgia for the great work they've done to pull this together, to move it, even though it's done online and virtually. And it's kind of hard to work always on Zoom and stuff. And like you said, as you said, for me, working on Zoom and working like this is the first time in my life I have sat at a desk for so long, and it's driving me crazy, to be honest. I never felt as punished as I do now with this Zooming that's going on. It's just such a hard way of working, and I have given my hat out to those who sit on a desk day by day, every day. It is tremendously hard work. It's not for me, and so I'm hoping that we can get this vaccine as soon as we can, so we can be able to meet people in real life and energize ourselves from those interactions that we get. And we just want to say those few remarks and say thank you all. We're all looking forward to this working, and once the vaccine is out, maybe we'll come out to Georgia and catch up and see how things are going and enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kiai. Of course, we will be waiting for you in Georgia as soon as vaccine comes in and we are all vaccinated. And thank you for inspiring words. Now I would like to it's another honor for me to give the word to Jeff Wiese, who is representing the Human Rights Watch and who has been very important in developing these two tools that we'll be talking about today. Please, Jeff, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you very much, Mina and Ketty. So yeah, Mina explained pretty well, I think, the importance of alliances, but also touched on sort of one of the challenges that you have with coalitions like this with diverse members, and that is finding your point of convergence where you can actually work together and where the points you agree on and what you can do practically. And for us, in the early stages, I think the first thing that became clear, one of the things that became clear, was workplace safety was definitely a big issue for our members. And of course, Human Rights Watch too, I think our most recent big report on Georgia in 2019 was about workplace safety, specifically in mines. But it's been an issue we've followed for quite a while. And partly this interest, I think, for the members, it goes back to Georgia's recent history. I mean, many of you will know, but for those of you who don't, around 2006, Georgia went through a phase of very drastic deregulation for the purpose of ostensibly attracting foreign investment. But as part of that, it really wiped out a lot of the workers' rights on the books, and also led to the wiping out of the labor inspectorate, which is in charge of inspecting employers for workplace safety. And then immediately after that, we saw sort of 75% increase in workplace injuries and deaths. And since about 2013, 2015 or so, there's been some steps towards improving that. I think notably last year in 2019, well, first of all, in 2015, the labor inspectorate was reinstituted, recomposed. 2019, they were given expanded powers. And of course, in 2021, on January 1st, there'll be something approaching a full-fledged labor inspectorate. So we sense, I think, a lot of momentum around this issue, right? And the question is, what could we do to sort of add to that? We came up with this idea of something that would be sort of publicizing or promoting, if you will, the work of the labor inspectorate, because we definitely believe that that's a key piece to ensuring proper workplace safety, is a strong, independent, and well-resourced labor inspectorate. The issue now is that it's still young, and I think it needs that public boost a little. If you want to find a inspectorate report right now, for example, it's pretty hard. You would need to file a Freedom of Information Act request. You probably need to have a pretty good idea of what reports you're looking for. It's not a simple process. So what we came up with this idea of the Workplace Safety Monitor is basically a visual database that attempts to collate a sizable portion, perhaps not all, but the most important workplace safety reports filed by the labor inspectorate. And the idea being that, say, an employee can check on their employer, a potential employee could check on their employer, a journalist or researcher could do some initial research that way and see what they find, look at trends and that sort of thing. We thought this would go a long way towards transparency, towards increasing public confidence in public knowledge, awareness of what the inspectorate does, and ultimately creating some public will or political will eventually that would agitate for better resources, more independence, and a stronger, more credible labor inspectorate. So I'm going to let me share my screen now so I can actually walk everyone through the tool just briefly. Let me see if I can get this to. Okay, hopefully you can all see that. This is our main homepage, and you can find the tool either up here through the tools link. We also have it down here. This is again at shroma.ge. That takes you to sort of the homepage of the monitor. So as I mentioned, it's a visual database. This kind of up top, it explains what it is. For the moment, or we chose, I should say, to start the database from September 2019, because that's the point that the inspectorate was given sort of expanded authority to conduct workplace inspections without prior consultation with the employer, surprise inspections, essentially. So we started from that date. This is sort of a beta version. As you can see down here, it only has 121 inspections for the moment. That's partly related to COVID issues, and we hope that starting in in early 2021, we'll get a more regular flow of reports coming in. So be more and more useful as it becomes more populated with data. So yeah, going down, I mean, I think it's a fairly self-explanatory tool, and I think pretty easy to use. You start off with some key statistics that let you know what's in the database. Your sort of how many reports or how many inspections we've covered, how many violations found, workplace injuries and deaths, fines, and employers shut down. And each of these boxes basically functions as a filter. So if you wanted to see, for example, where workplace deaths occurred or just those reports, you would just click that and it'll show you those. And then the second part, it just breaks it down by region. So if you're interested in a specific region, you can hover and see what's happening in each region, how many reports, how many violations, and so on. And then finally, you come down to basically a listing of all the reports, and what you get is a summary. And then you can click on that for more details, but what I'm going to do is actually switch it to English to show one function. It's a little more difficult for me in English right now, Georgian. The database is entirely bilingual, by the way, except for the PDFs of the actual reports filed by the Inspectorate. So yeah, the last part in terms of helping people search for what they're looking for is this set of filters here. So if you only want to look, in a certain employment sector, construction, let's say, I can apply that filter. And then it fetches only those entries. I think we have a bit of a lag. Let me try that again. There we go. Okay. So you see all the construction ones are showing up. And if you want to find out more about a particular entry, you click for details. Sorry, I think I have a little bit of slow internet, but I have another window up here. I believe. No. Try another one. Well, we can come back to that at some point, but basically you get a full accounting of what each of these violations would be related to, and then a status report, whether they need to be re-inspected, whether they've been addressed, or whether they're still outstanding. And then of course, all the details of the inspection, whether the fine has been imposed and that sort of thing here. Looks like it's loaded now. So you see, for example, kind of repeats the data there, and then you have a list of all the violations identified. And the status is pending re-inspection, essentially. And at the very bottom, you can click to view the actual PDF that was filed by the Labor Inspectorate. Yeah, let me go ahead and stop that screen share. So yeah, as I said, this is still sort of a beta version. We're making some we're fine-tuning a bit, and I think come January 2021, when the Inspectorate expands its powers to also include general labor rights and not just safety and health, which they're doing now, then we'll be looking at adding some other features at that point to account for those. And I would encourage everyone to have a spin through it, and if you actually see anything that you think would be useful to fix or to add, we would love to have your feedback. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I think it was very interesting, and I'm also glad to hear that you already know Georgian. You could present the page in Georgian. And now I would like to ask Sopo Japaridze to speak. She's the head of the Solidarity Network, which actually brings together the service sector workers and the medical workers. And she would be speaking about a second tool, which is the wage theft calculator. Please.
Hello, everyone.
I would like to greet you. I would like to tell you today why we decided to come up with this calculator and how it's going to help you. So to very briefly say, like this kind of lost wages are wages that your employer is not paying you. And from the very beginning, we had this idea that, again, like this is a serious challenge. Again, we started from this because a lot of people were calling us saying that, again, like this was pretty visible that they were not receiving the whole due amount. And so we were trying to help them individually, but then actually, like we found out that it's not only like that their monthly salary is not paid in full amount, but that there are different techniques that the employers are using so that basically you are not receiving the due amount of the salary. So we will show you how this calculator works. So basically, one of the problems is, again, when like they're made to work overtime and they're not paid for overtime work. This is also like so-called like stolen salary. And or, for example, you have been working for like certain amount of hours, but you are not fully paid for all the hours that you have worked. So our calculator uses actually the like a fixed tariff 125. Also, again, for example, in supermarkets and shops, when, for example, like somebody stole something and say, for example, the salesperson has to reimburse out of this salary. Or, for example, it is like a training or professional development courses that you're going to attend, which are not paid for by your employer. For example, like if a person is working for like 11 months, then again, like the person is entitled to leave. Also, if a person is dismissed from his employment and then like no like compensation package is provided. Also, another serious challenge in conditions of pandemic, because like people are working out of home, and it's not your like working hours, but your employer, say in the evening hours, is requiring you to do something, and you are not getting paid for that. Another problem is related to, for example, transportation expenses. For example, if you are like a minor and it takes you, for example, like half an hour to get to your job and you're not paid for that. So Jeff is sharing now the calculator. So these are the questions that we are asking. So, for example, what is your hourly reimbursement? And then we calculate how much is paid, for example, in hour, and like how much you should be paid. So we also calculate, for example, like for how long you have been working. For example, you have been working for 11 months, that like you're entitled to leave. This is just an example, and we can type in. Actually, it's not mandatory to answer the questions. So it's not obligatory to indicate, for example, your name or like your employer's name. And so here we see the wages. we try to specify further what type of wages you lose, for example, how long it takes you to get there, or like, for example, whether like you have to use this special equipment.
Did you like just stay with the do you remember what it was? I can tell you if you like. I'm not going to go through all the questions.
So there are some questions that we overviewed. There are many more questions. Jeff, you requested to go to the last page, and in the end, we will show you, for example, how much you lose per month, per year, per week. And then again, like there is a description. How much is again like your due wages in 1 hour and so on. So this is how this calculator works, and there are symbols indicated. This actual symbols show what kind of, for example, infringement is there in regard to your wages. Again, this is about 5-6 pages. Again, it may seem that this is pretty long, but when the employers get used to filling it in, they will understand better what it means, like what kind of wages are stolen, what's happening from the standpoint of wage theft. So again, if you ask an employee, for example, what is his salary, he will say the amount that is indicated in the contract. But again, like if you go further and ask in more details, you will find out like how much time he loses till like he gets to the job and so on. So again, like it may seem a little bit like long, but it helps to understand what is the duty of the employer. Also, it helps us to collect this information to better understand the general picture, to have this kind of evidence basis to show to politicians, to public, and quite often when we're working on the labor code, a lot of employees do not properly understand a lot of concepts, and so actually this salary, this is the amount that you should be paid. It shows your worth, and they should understand it. And it will help us also to operate as a platform. So probably at this I will finish my presentation.
Thank you very much, Sofo. I was thinking for myself, I suddenly got concerned that our employees, Open Society Georgia Foundation employees, could also start using this tool. I hope they don't find any wage theft. Now, as we are having another presentation today, I think we will be directly going into it. Mr. Georgi Tsintsadze from EMC, he will be talking, very briefly about the report, which will be published soon, about the influence and the impact of the pandemic on workers. Of course, as we are saying, exactly like when we had a feeling that maybe labor rights would start improving in Georgia, and when we finally got these amendments to the code, then we had COVID. And COVID, of course, had a horrible impact on work, on working environment, and workers' rights. So please, Georgi, we are now listening to you. And then we will be ready to collect the questions.
გამარჯობა, დიდი მადლობა. ძალიან მოხარული ვარ, რომ ამ ღონისძიებაში.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to participate in this event. And we are very happy that we are members of this platform. So again, first of all, allow me to wish all of you success with these new instruments. And we prepared a report on social protection and labor rights in conditions of pandemic. Gyurgul and Chairman Tamara Keburia were co-authors. Koter Istave was leading this research. So I will be briefly just speaking what you can see in our report. On Friday, we will have presentation at 4 o'clock, and that's where we are going to present the report. So today, I will briefly tell you what you can see in this report. It is composed of 3 parts. First part, this is like formal or like official sector of employment. So again, like we relied on certain like legal consultations that we were providing during the pandemic. Then we analyzed the information collected by that, and then of course like we requested different public information, also collected information from open sources, used questionnaire, had interviews. So we were conducting the telephone interviewing individual as well as like a group, and we identified like a key drawbacks in the sphere of labor relations, and in the formal part again, like we can say that there are like 2 types of infringements. This is first of all like termination of employment on illegal grounds. For example, when people had to go on leave, unpaid leave, and also like labor contracts which have been terminated for like invalid reason. This was pretty large scale, and it was specific to many different sectors. Where again, pandemic and this economic shock had hit. And on the other hand, another challenge in the formal sector was when the employees have continued working, but they continued working in riskier or more unfair environment, and quite frequently again like this means that there were like major changes in their, for example, like working hours, which again like these changes were not coordinated with say like employees, and it is in different sectors, shall it be transport or healthcare or like retail sales. And because they had the problems of safety, you know that pandemics create certain healthcare risks, and of course like these risks need to be reduced and mitigated. So we saw that in many different sectors, the employers could not provide proper safety their employees. So basically, again, major part of employees, they were terminated, while those who were not terminated, they had to work in more like risky environment. It substantially changed conditions without actually getting reimbursement for overtime. Of course, pandemic continues, and of course, it's very early yet to assess full-fledged say like result of the pandemic. But I think it's timely that I mean, we have already provided legal assessment of these practices, and I think it is important and relevant. Of course, we understand that gradually we will see some more problems. We have this second wave of pandemic, and on the other hand, it's good that we have this kind of report for the comparison sake. Of course, we want to do the follow-up for like longer term results, and I'm sure we will see some more challenges. Second part of our report, it is dedicated to informal sector, and here the key issues that we cover is unavailability of data, which is again like the result of the fact that the state has not been paying due attention to like informal sector. You know that like informal sector actually its share in the economy is pretty large. And actually, according to some of the research, it is half of GDP. But despite this, for years and years, again, like this informal employment was beyond actually the study of the state or like a collection of data. Again, this sector faced a lot of challenges, losing employment, income. These people also needed some like social benefits, and again, in this kind of informal sector, there are different types of vulnerabilities. First of all, they may not have access to different public services, and or like they do not have information, for example, and this was clearly seen when, for example, this anti-crisis measures were proposed. And quite often, for example, this in informal sector, they didn't know, for example, whether they were entitled to certain like benefits and assistance. So again, like I will quickly go to the third part, which is the part of social protection, and there we pose two fundamental questions. First, like why the population of Georgia is so vulnerable economically, and why more than 80% does not have savings, and as soon as they say lose employment, they are immediately under the poverty line. And second question that we pose is what kind of instruments of social protection the state has, and what we have identified during pandemic crisis. And we said that again, like this revealed that again, one of the reasons is unavailability of minimal salaries, no social safeguards, no insurance, for example, or unemployment benefits. And again, that's why the state had to come up with special anti-crisis programs and measures and do social transfers. And again, so this is, of course, a huge burden for current social assistance system, where, like, again, those social workers who were participating in administration of all these benefits, because they didn't have sufficient resource. So again, these traditional instruments of social protection, their unavailability gave us extremely vulnerable situation, and the state basically did not have all necessary institutes to rely on in conditions of crisis. We do hope that this will be taken into consideration. So that's all probably that I wanted to say at current stage. And those of you who are interested, you're invited to listen to our full report on Friday.
Thank you very much, Georgi. I would agree absolutely that pandemic has revealed even a darker picture than we had all expected, or a darker picture also of social safety and security than we already had imagined. But I think we are not having lots of time left, so now we are ready for questions and answers or any comments you would have. Maybe we will try to just go over the time for the 5 to 10 minutes if everybody agrees. So you can raise your hand, or you can also write your question in the Q&A space. There is something in chat. No, not yet. Either it was a bit overwhelming or we made everything clear and nobody has any questions or comments anymore. Let's wait for a couple of more minutes, and if not, we could end our meeting. I really hope that we were clear and concise, and we talked about 2 new online tools, about the outline of the report and general situation on labor rights in Georgia. It's pretty dramatic, but as I said, our Fair Labor platform and of course other organizations as well in Georgia are planning to have a big fight for improving the labor rights in Georgia. So if I don't see any questions, I guess it's time to thank everybody, the speakers, the participants for your interest, and just say goodbye. Let's hope to meet in much better times for the whole world and Georgia as well. Thank you. Bye.